So on day 5, I'm out here imagining what it might be like to be building a house. Walking the perimeter, go visit the kids in the field. And by the way, welcome to the channel. We're going to talk about building permits today because we can't do a whole lot on site here. But I am out here walking the perimeter of the house, dreaming about what it might be like to actually be building something here on our land. So we'll see you inside and hopefully give you some good information that will help you on your journey of building your own homestead. Hands are pretty cold after doing some snow, whatever you call that. And what I think I'm going to cover is a few of the situations that you're going to run into potentially while trying to get a permit, and the advantages and disadvantages of those different situations. Because not every county or city is exactly the same as far as permitting a new build. So we're going to cover that in this video, and hopefully actually help me get some clarity on my next moves, because it's not like anybody ever gets used to all of the things they have to deal with the county when you only do it once in a while. So here we go. All right, I'm back inside. Broadly speaking, I'm going to go through the 3 main situations that you might find yourself in when you're trying to get a building permit. And then I'll tell you which situation I'm in right now. And I'll tell you some of the pros and cons of each of the situations that you might find yourself in. First, you're going to want to search the web and start at the smallest governing body that you can think of and move your way up. So start with the subdivision. Does it have an HOA? Does the HOA have any rules or regulations or taxes that they want to assess when you go to build a house or when you go to do any kind of project? And then move to the city or township, and then move to the county and ask at each of those levels what is required for a building permit. And those people should know what you need to do. If they don't have anything, they'll just move you on to the next. And if you end up at the state level, you're probably not going to find people easily that can help you, because on the state level there are regulations, but they're relying on the cities and the counties to enforce those regulations, at least in the state of Missouri. So you've checked online, you've called the numbers, and you might find one of 3 situations, and there's advantages and there's disadvantages. There's disadvantages and there are advantages to each of the situations. So situation 1, you call and a building permit is required, and it's on the city or the county level, and they have a booklet of stuff that you have to come up with before you can put a shovel in the ground. They require you to have everything figured out: your electric, your power for gas utilities, your water. They require you to hook up to a certain water supply, which is debatable whether they can do that, but they will, in some scenarios, they will try to make sure that you hook up to the county's water supply. They may require engineered prints and plans. They may require truss plans with engineer's stamps on them. They may require floor plans with engineer's stamps on them for all of your beams and everything like this. And so there might be a situation where you are, and I'll show you this here in a second, what my situation is, where you're required to produce a lot of documentation, and this is before you can ever, and money that you will spend also, before you can ever do anything on your project. So I'll move on to scenario 2. Scenario 2 is there's a requirement for a building permit, but they don't really give you any direction as to what it is that you're going to be required to do or have in place before they will give you a final on that building permit. A final is their stamp of approval that you can occupy or use the structure. So a city requires that you have a building permit, you pay them their permit fee, but then they don't come and inspect it. They don't come and do anything to you or for you during the process. They just come at the end and they inspect it and they decide whether it's safe or not. And then the third situation is you might find yourself in a situation where, to the best of your ability, you have not been able to find that there is a governing body that is going to exercise authority over you while you're building. I have run into all three of these situations within the last year while working on projects, and there are pros and there are cons to each of them. The obvious con to situation one is you feel like your tires are spinning when you're trying to get a permit, and you're also trying to get every subcontractor lined out, and you're trying to get the utilities all squared away, and you're trying to get your water service, and you're trying to do everything, and you're thinking, I wish that I could get the permit so that I could have a guy dig a hole and start putting a foundation in the ground. While it is annoying and irritating, it's really advantageous, because by the time you get a permit, you already know, you've done all of the back work, you've done all of the research, and you pretty much what it's going to cost to get all of these things done, and that it's going to be feasible to put all of the utilities in. You're not going to get into a situation like I did recently where it was scenario 2, which was there was a building permit required and there's a whole inspection process, but they didn't require the homeowner to establish that they could get water from the water department. And so then we contacted the water department, and the water department said, yes, there is a water line right in front of your house, but we can't let you hook up to it. You're going to have to find another way. So then the county, when you notify the county, hey, we can't get water service from there, they put you on hold and they say, you're going to have to figure out a water source before you can continue. But you've already been granted the permit. And in this scenario, the guy had already built the structure of his house. And so he has a house up and he doesn't know if he can get water. And they're not going to grant occupancy to a house that has no water service to it, because that means you can't run your septic system. And essentially it's kind of a useless house. It's just a shell of a building. So there are disadvantages. One of the advantages to scenario 2, where there's a building plan requirement or permit requirement, but there's no real requirement for all of these documents to be generated. He got moving and he got halfway into his project, and then he got put at a standstill, and everybody who was in line to do subcontract work and put in things for him had to just stop and rethink what they were doing, because there was no reason to keep spending money if he wasn't going to be able to put the house in the ground. So scenario 3 sounds great. Oh, there's no building codes. But on the state level, it sounds great if you're trying to build a homestead. You think, oh man, that's cool. I don't have to pull a building permit to build my house. Well, there are still federal regulations and there are still state regulations that you are supposed to follow. One that is a huge one is you are supposed to follow regulations that are federal guidelines on putting in a septic system for your liquid waste, for your sinks and your toilets and your showers. And in a county where you don't have a building permit process, you might not realize what that is going to entail, and you may get farther into your project and realize that the soil type isn't right, and this system that you're going to have to put in to deal with your waste is going to end up being way bigger as in way more cost than you thought. Or the land isn't going to work out very well for that system, and you're going to have a lagoon in a location that you really were not hoping to have a septic lagoon. So while 3 can be enticing and 1 can be irritating, scenario 1 is probably your best situation. There's a clear set of guidelines. It says right in the code, in our region, for instance, they follow 2006 or newer international building codes. So you can go straight to that code book or any newer code book, and as long as you follow those guidelines, they will allow you to build a structure in that way. In our area, I will show you the documents. There are quite a number of documents that are required, and there are a lot of phone calls you have to make before the county will give you a building permit. And if I was going to wave a magic wand, the scenario that I have enjoyed working under the most is where there is a city or a county that has building codes and requires inspections, but they don't do them themselves. They hire a third-party inspector who does just home inspections and property inspections all the time. And For some reason, those situations tend to be significantly less, they can be significantly less adversarial. And when I say adversarial, a county building inspector can get the feeling that you don't like working with him or whatever. And it can feel like, even if he doesn't, it can feel like he has it out for you. And he might get the feeling that you have it out for him. And in the scenario where you're hiring a third party, essentially, I am building a house and I am paying another subcontractor to come and give me inspections and give me advice and to help me get a house that is safety code certified. That guy tends to feel like he's working for me because I could hire somebody else to do this job. That inspector isn't working for me in that he's going to do whatever I say and ignore the rules, but he's working for me in that he knows that I can stop using him and start using someone else. Whereas when you're dealing with someone with the city or with the county, depending on how they feel about their job, it is possible that a misunderstanding going between you and the inspector that ends up making it a more adversarial situation while you're building. In our county, one of the things that I have run into is that apparently, according to the well drillers, it is completely legitimate to have your property on a well instead of on the county water supply. But if you talk to the people a few years ago at the county level, they basically tell you, no, you absolutely cannot. You have to use their water service that's provided by the water department in your county. I still haven't gotten to the bottom of that situation because I have decided to not create an early on adversarial situation with the codes department. And so I find myself in scenario one. Scenario one, lots of things that you have to get in order before you start. And there are definitely pros to that situation because you know exactly what you need to have when you walk in the door. Now, if you don't want to do the paperwork and you don't want to do the research, you're going to walk in the door and you're going to hand them insufficient documentation and they're going to send you packing. But at least they told you on paper what you need to bring to them in order for them to grant you a building permit and start your building process. So that's, in a nutshell, the situation you might find yourself in while you're trying to get a building permit. And every county is going to be a little bit different, but again, I'll just reiterate, you want to start at the bottom. And when I say at the bottom, I don't mean that the guy that runs your HOA is a bad person or anything. I just mean he has the least amount of authority. The things he cares about are the least important things that can be cared about. But he might have the authority to tell you what color your house has to be. I don't know. I've heard of these kinds of things. He might have the authority to tell you you need to have a certain number of trees in your front yard, or they can't have fruit on them, or whatever the case may be. But if you think about how unimportant those things are to your build process, they're very unimportant, but they're very close to home. And as you move out to the city and the county, you're talking about safety codes and offsets from the road. But offsets from the road, again, are they important? Yes, they're important for the fact that you're building a structure and you don't want it sitting too close to your neighbor's house. But those are just arbitrary rules that were made up for the subdivision that you're in or the town that you're in. It needs to be 1,400 square feet, for instance. That's a rule that a lot of towns have. Well, it's not that that's unimportant, because if you want to build a 1,000-foot house and they won't let you, it becomes important. But really, in the grand scheme of things, how big your house is shouldn't make any difference to anyone. But here's the thing, you get to the state level and the state says you need to have a certified septic system. That's kind of important. Nobody wants you dumping your toxic waste from your toilet into their yard or into their land. Even though the state isn't necessarily coming to you in your county or your town and saying, we're enforcing these rules, the state still says you need to build structures that are safe according to international building standards. And that's the kind of thing that the state level is going to be concerned with. And the federal level, again, is going to be concerned with clean air, clean water, making sure that you're not building something that is going to damage the environment. So I think that's, in a nutshell, where I probably made this sound a whole bunch of times during this video. But I'm not going to reshoot this video because I don't have time. I got to build a house. So that's it. Subscribe if you're getting any value out of this. Hopefully you will get a lot of value out of it. and we will see you next time.